class and ID.
Use the dots and the hash.
Okay, so
I would like to ask, after the class, if you can give us like a class work, give us like something to design similar to this.
okay. Okay, so the assignment will just be what you've been designing now, but instead of using it inline, you will then use style elements. All the example you've done so far, go back, revisit them, and instead of doing inline, you use style attribute, so use style elements to achieve them. That's what we will do. But I will also I'll bring an example and I'll work on that for you guys. However, let me try and explain the question that you asked now. So label is not, all this here, they are not CSS. This is just HTML, right? And the only thing I just introduced were what? Class and ID. I introduced class and ID. So I start with number 1, which is selector by class by element name. Element name is just the name of the element. This is label, this input, this they're just name, this is HR, this form is all written there. That's selecting the element by the name, and that's how we're able to make H1 red by saying H1 color red. That's how we're able to do it. Label, the reason why label is here is because we want to make label break like this. So this is HTML label, and what we are doing is that we are styling. Again, if you don't understand a particular property, don't worry about it. Like this display, now this is the first time I'm using display, so ignore this. Focus. You already know most of these things I'm showing you. You already know border color, padding, all these ones. The only thing that's new to you now is this display, so ignore. And again, this is a learning point, so it means now you now know display. Display is to break item into block or inline, to make item a block item or an inline item. We'll talk about block and inline soon. In this video, in this lesson, we'll talk about block and inline. Okay, so what is class and ID? I told you class is a way to group elements together, like all this username, email, password. You can say they belong to one class for proper styling. Now I started with this, that these elements are all inputs, right? Input. How many inputs do we have here? I'm expecting a feedback. How many inputs do we have here? Yeah, I can hear you. How many inputs do we have here? Yeah, I'm expecting your reply.
We have 4 inputs.
Good. You have 4 inputs, but only 3 of them receive text, right?
Yes.
So we need to be able to differentiate these 3 inputs from this last submit input or submit button. The way to differentiate them is to call these 3 inputs the same class name and call this last input its own separate name. Go ahead.
So based on my understanding so far, we need to differentiate it, not to use style it, because I'm going to style the login button differently.
So what you can style them. Yeah, you can style them differently, and this is an example. And the reason why I'm using this one is because I want to show you similarities between the ID, the class, and the reason why you should know when to use those when you need to use classes. So as I've said, the reason why I'm using classes is because their tag name is the same. They are both called what? Input. These 4 are input elements. So if I style it the way they are called, login will be affected, right? So if that's the case, I don't need to style only these 3. I will call this tree a particular name that I want of my choice. So I'm calling it text input, text input, text input. Then the last one, I'm calling it submit button. And where am I attaching that to? I'm attaching that to the class attributes of each of these. So if you've done that, I can then go and style in peace. I can go and style in peace by saying, okay, this one is called test input, test input, test input. So the three of them, I style it this way. To style a class, you use a dot. You start with the dots, and then you follow by the class name. Whatever you call the class is what you give it to, right? Then the last one, which is the button here, I also called it a separate name. I call it sub button. I use a dot, I put it, and then I apply the style to it. It carries the styles. But if I just use inputs like this, remember we want to stop doing inline styling. That's why we are doing this. If I just do like this, everything just becomes blue. That's what happened. Because now what this does is it styles all input elements. That's what this code does. But we have 4 input elements. We want to be able to differentiate all of them. So that's why, hence we have this. We had to go and put class attributes in this. Normally, if we wanted to do this with inline, we have to style individual separately. That's a lot of work. But this one, you just needed to create its own class and create, class for what you need to do. So, summary now. You know how to style by elements, you know how to style by class, and you know how to style by ID. Styling by elements is just using the name. Is it? Let me write it here. Styling. So let me use proper commenting. So this styling by element name, right? Straightforward. Just use the name of the element. It's as simple as that. This is also styling by element name. Just use the element name straight ahead. Why don't we use the element name for input? Because we have 4 inputs, and one of the inputs is doing something different. Do you get? So that's why we have to separate it to do something else. So this one is styling by what? Styling by what? I need your response. This one here, what one I'm on now? This is styling by what? Yeah, no, text input is styling by what?
It's styling by elements name.
No. This H1 is styling by element name. Label is styling by element name. What is dot input dot text dash input styling by? So what is this one styling by?
So it's styling by CSS ID.
So this is styling by ID. So this is styling by what?
CSS ID.
So this is styling by class. Styling by class. How did you know? Because it has a dot. This one has a hash, right? This one has a dot. This one has nothing. Do you get? This one is just like that. It doesn't need anything to represent it. So this is the basic form of CSS selector. Why did I say it's a basic form of CSS selector? We have other ones. This is where you start. Very simple. 3. We're just starting with 3 by the name of the elements, and this is why we learn HTML first, because we know what element is now, right? You can style by, if you want to style HR now, you just go and style it. Let's add HR here. So if you want to style HR, you want all your HR to carry a particular design. I don't think I've styled HR before, so let me try and color it to be red. Okay, color does not work because color is front, so let's do background color. So you can see that red pop. I'm sure you saw the red pop. Did you see that? The red popped now. But I want to style, I want to style something that is very visible. So let's style border. Border. Let me style the border and see what happens. Let me do green 1px. Let me do dash. Yeah, that worked. HR is horizontal line. We've used HR a lot now in our demo. We use HR a lot. So where are we now? We're in our CSS section. Do you get? We're in our style. You know there's an HR tag. This is it here. This is our HR tag. So we use it after our login to create horizontal line. At the bottom, we also did that to create a demarcation between your form and your what's it called, and your submit button. So if you want to differentiate between the first HR and the second HR, what do? You use the class. Look at it very well. This one applied to how many of the lines? 2, right? Just by specifying the tag alone, or rather specifying the definition by label. We're defining it by label or by the name of the elements. The element's name is HR. So we're defining this by the elements, and we're saying the border should be green, 1x and dash. So now, but we know that there are 2 on the document. So I want to be able to identify the first one from the last one. So I will add a class to it. I will either use class or ID. I can either use what? A class or ID. So which should we use? So we just say class, and I can give it any name. So you give me a name. What should we call it? Just give me any name. Yes. No space. Break. Break does not give a correct description of it. So I will say HR-login. That's like horizontal line for login. Or HR login. Yes, something like that. That's horizontal line for login. You know. Then what should we call the second one?
Can we say login line?
Yeah, you can say yeah, that's another good one. So we can say login line. Login line. So the second one, we can call it submit line. We'll call it class, then we do submit line. So now that we are done, yeah, that's fine. The reason why do you think we are creating those 2? I want to style them differently. Yeah, I don't want them to be both green. You can see that it's still carrying our green. And the reason why it's carrying green is because we style HR, which is okay. HR should be green. When you apply a class, nothing happens until you style that class. So how do you style the class? How do you style this login dash line? How do you style it? I'm waiting for you. How do you style login dash line? Yeah, I want to style this one now. How do you call the selector? How do you reference the selector? Yeah, the login line.
We're not going to use a dot or a dash. We'll just use something with style.
So what do we type here? What's the selector name? What's going to be the selector name?
Selector name should be style. Then we use the name, which is login, HR login.
Let me start again. Do you know what this is? This is a selector name. Selector name. This is selector name. This is selector name. This is selector name. This is selector name. So what selector name are we going to use for the login dash line?
Is HR.login.
Like this. Do you mean like this?
It should be .hr the name. HR the name. I don't think it's dot. It's h.hr.
The name is there. Oh. What you had when I gave us the name now. The class name is login dash
I
line.
the name again.
Okay, it's not visible.
Yes.
It should be there. This is this not this is the element here. Login dash line. There's a dash there. Login dash line.
Yes.
So what? How do we reference it? How do I type it? What do I type first? I've not typed the selector now. What's the name of the selector?
The selector is dots.
Okay. So this is it. Correct. So now that we have it here, we can then say, okay, we want our first login line to be brown or to be gray. So do you notice that change? Let's use orange so that I can see that. So do you see that? Orange. Yeah, so do you see that? So we have that. So if you want to, do for the second one, you can also continue and implement, for this. So what will be this now? How do we reference this class? Dot what?
Submit.
Dash line. There's going to be submit dash line. It's going to be submit dash line because that's the name of the CSS. That's the name we call it.
Submit dash line. Choose the name, the color.
Okay, so we have that. Then you can then do whatever it is you want to implement. So let's do purple. Let's do wine. Is there a wine? Is there a color called wine? No, I've not tried that before. Yeah, I know there is, but in the web it might not. As you can see, there's no wine purple. So I told you there are name colors. So there's no name color that is called wine. So that's why it's not giving us anything. Okay, so that is that's everything I wanted to talk about on selector. I'll wait. Do you have any question before I move to something else?
Okay, I think it's getting very clear.
Okay. So the more you play around with it, yeah. So there's a video already for this. Yeah. So what I will ask you to do is go and watch the video. It's just 5 minutes. Watch it. It's gonna be clearer. Trust me, it's gonna be clearer when you watch the video. So what I want to explain next is block and inline elements. So we have it's very important, block and inline elements. So when I mean elements, I mean HTML elements. That's what I mean. So I will just show you. I'll put it out there and then you will see it. So we have HTML elements. I will just type out the ones that I guess you know, right? So we have H1, right? You know H1 already. You have so let me just type H1. Then you have paragraph. You have div, which we have not talked about before, but I'll just put it out here. So this will be an introduction to it. We have span. We've also introduced span. And we have which one do I want to introduce again? So I think we'll just stop here. We have several ones, but I just want to use this to demonstrate something. Let me have them. I'll have them 2 so that you see what I mean. As I'll repeat them twice so that you understand what's going on. Now notice, let me try and see if I can add something else. Okay, let me introduce bold. So let me introduce underline, and I think I will stop there. Okay, as I've said, I'm introduced them in twos. Now, what is block and inline element? An inline element is an element that continues in respect of the previous element. Like you can have them side by side. When you put the next elements along with it, it will just flow. It won't go to the next line. That's what an inline element is. So it's an opposite of a block element. A block element will take the full screen, the full width of the screen. So let me use this to demonstrate so that we'll see it. I want to put a weird style sheet out or a weird CSS out. So just ignore it if you just ignore this. So I want to show you what I mean. 1x solid. Let me just say red. So we have style. And we have solid. Okay. Suddenly this guy has disappeared. Okay. So let me make sure that everything is closed properly. Okay, is styling the body as well. So let me start, and I hope I will use this to explain what I mean by inline. So while this is trying to render for you to see, I want to add something else. Okay, I think this should be easy for you to understand now. So there are some elements. Elements are divided into two. They are either inline or what's it called now? Or block. Even though we have other forms, table, cell, and things like that, but we'll focus on inline and block. So by default, when you see a block element, they take over the full length of the screen. Like look at H1. H1 starts from here and takes over the full side. Do you notice that? That's why we have, and that's why I'm saying I'm using two. I'm writing them in twos so that you see that they take over, the space that they occupy. Now look at H1. It takes over the space, meaning it does not share the width with other elements. I use the second one as an example again to see. The same thing with paragraph. When you write anything in paragraph, it takes the full width, right? It does not share with other elements. The same thing with div, that's div. It also does not share. However, look at span. Span shares with the next one. And remember our example when we were doing Google, doing Google logo. We use span for each of the letters because span will allow you to share the next letter on the same line. So the same thing with bold and underline. So there are other elements like that, that are inline, or blocked. So as you use these elements, you need to know either they are inline or blocked. This will help you to style properly. So let me label that we use now. Label, I just noticed that it's inline. I used to think it was block. So you can see that the label is showing inline. The reason why it's breaking like this is because, let me just put it on top so that you see clearly. So you can see that the label is inline. The label is inline. So these other ones are by themselves. So do you have any question on this? Inline and block elements. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like, share, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification to encourage us to make more content like this. If you have any feedback for us, kindly drop it in the comment section below. See you in the next video. Thank you.